IPMNation.com.
Living in a city, when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are felt, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right. See, she never wanted.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. John Rich, and you've tuned into Dr. John's Neighborhood. I am excited to host yet another show on this brilliant podcast that is expanding its reach every single day, it seems. We're now syndicated on Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio, and we're starting to get bigger time guests all the time. I'm continually honored to be a part of this endeavor here. I invite you to check out my website at drjohnrich.com. Send me any emails about the show or the site or any of the services that I provide. You can email me at info@drjohnrich.com. And then also check out my new Facebook group. It literally started today. Today is Thursday, August 30th. It's a Facebook group called Money Matters, and it's focused particularly on helping parents and families take control of their finances. So we're going to be discussing budgeting and saving and investing and things like that. So join us over there on Facebook. I have on the line with me my guest for this evening. Her name is Yafa Crane Luria. She is the CEO and founder of a website and a service called Blocked to Brilliant. Say hi, Yafa.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
So, Blocked to Brilliant, is that the name of the website? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, blockedtobrilliant.com.
Okay, and that's with an ED, right? So, BLOCKEDTO, yep. Brilliant.com.
You got it.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
So, what is that?
Well, I help families that have kids or teens with ADD, ADHD. Generically called ADHD, actually. I've been doing this I've been working with kids with ADHD since 1984. I was a teacher and a school counselor for 30 years, and then started my own business as a coach/educator. I wanted to help parents that were confused by what the heck is going on. I mean, you can say, oh, my child has ADHD, that's what's going on. But each ADHD child is so unique in and of him or herself that it's really hard to just lay this sort of template over each child and expect them to fit. And I think that's often what causes kids with ADHD to have so much trouble, is that we lay this template of, here's what normal looks like. Now you need to fit in.
Okay.
And that's not possible.
So before we start talking about some of the individual variations underneath that diagnosis, for those people who aren't quite familiar, I mean, everybody's probably heard of ADHD, but may not know exactly what that is comprised of. So in your experience, there must be certain things about the typical ADHD child that can be put into the category. Would you agree or no?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean,
so what are some things?
Yeah, you have these like 3 or 4 sort of like symptoms that everybody agrees on, which are inattention or selective attention, which can be hyperfocus or inattention. You have distractibility, hyperactivity in some people, and that's probably the most obvious one. Distractibility, inattention, hyperactivity.
That's okay. So
those
don't be
are the
nervous.
Typical ones. But then what people don't know about are these underlying ones, like emotional intensity. That's huge. Also, ADHD kids will have a kind of intelligence that is super creative, way out of the box. I mean, sometimes people will say, oh, I'm an out of the box thinker. And it's like, if you haven't suffered for being an out of the box thinker, you're not an out of the box thinker. You're just, creative in some way.
Can you give an example of that? That sounds interesting.
So, like, for instance, sometimes the out of the box thinking can be offensive to some people. For instance, I had a client who said that this was a while ago. It's dating itself, but they felt they had low self-esteem, really felt abandoned by their family. It was somewhat religious, so the child said, I feel abandoned by God, and he said, I just think God is busy looking at pictures of Angelina Jolie and really doesn't care about me.
Uh-huh.
And if you come from a religious family, that's a really what? Because it's such a human way to talk about God.
Right.
And it's a little bit, it's kind of got a little edge to it.
Sure.
And so you're going to have ideas that come up that with a child or a teen with ADHD that may shock.
Yeah.
The kind of the associations that are made may be shocking or just too off the wall. Like, that's just too weird.
So is that like a lack of a sensor, or is it just that the thinking is so quick and the reaction to the thinking is so quick that there's not time? Like, where is that coming from exactly?
I mean, it's lack of a filter, and also that, it's like that's just one idea of probably 7 others that this child had, and that's the one that was said because that was probably the first one. But our brains, and I have ADHD also, so our brains are super fast, and we're constantly making associations. And if we don't have a filter or a muzzle or whatever you want to call it, we're just going to say the thing that's on our mind. And that can be uncomfortable for people, and it can be disruptive also.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now I want to back up because I didn't know you also had ADHD. So tell us a little bit about that struggle. When, as somebody who's older, I'm not saying anything about, how old you are. I'm not asking you that question. But as somebody who's older and grew up at a time where ADHD was at the very least a little known diagnosis,
right?
I'll bet you there was a period of your life where you didn't even know that you were different or that you had anything going on.
I knew I was different.
Oh, you did?
But I didn't know why I was different.
Okay, so can you talk us through that struggle?
Yeah, absolutely. My childhood was almost unbearably lonely. I mean, there are times when I honestly don't know how I'm still alive because I was so lonely and such an outsider. And it was, all I wanted was for people to get me or to hear me or at least to be able to work with me and tell me, what am I doing wrong? Because I'm getting in trouble. I'm not doing great with relationships. And this is elementary school even. I don't know. I make a decision, I go to school in the morning and I make a decision. I'm going to be good today. I am not going to get in trouble. No one's going to notice me, this kind of thing. And the next thing I know, the teacher's telling me to stay in at recess. And I have no idea how I got from this sincere conviction to be good.
Yeah.
What happened in between that and having to stay in at recess? So ironically, my parents were both psychologists, and my mom was actually giving, at the time she was working for Head Start. She was a consultant for Head Start, and she was giving IQ tests to kids that at the time were called hyperkinetic.
Okay.
And for some reason, not even they noticed, or not even they could put that together, that could be something I had. And, but yeah, it was really, really hard. And I even went to an experimental elementary school and got in trouble there. I didn't really fit in at the experimental elementary school either. I was like way too alternative for them. And then,
so what did you do? What are some things you got in trouble for?
Oh my gosh. I got in trouble for, so in elementary school, I usually got in trouble for speaking out of turn. I got in trouble because I had my best friend, who's still my best friend, 50 years later. They felt that I was spending too much time focused, like the two of us were spending too much time with each other, and we needed to have more friends. And so they had a big conference about that, and we had team teaching. So a big conference meant me in a room with 5 other teachers. It was really hard.
Intimidating, yeah.
I was considered negative, which is true. I was negative. I complained a lot.
You were like, I am not negative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was negative. I mean, I don't know what I said back then.
Right.
But yeah, I was negative, with good reason, because I was miserable. But I did tease people. I was both a bully and I was bullied. And I don't mean, every single day for years and years and years. I bullied one person, and she was bullied by other people also. Not that excuses it, and I was bullied by one person. So it wasn't like a super, super ongoing thing. And I couldn't concentrate. And so I remember one day asking the teacher, do you have any music that I can listen to while I'm working? And she said, nobody can work when there's music playing. Right. And I said, I can. And I got in trouble. But I actually, to this day, when, there are different kinds of work I do as a business owner. And so, and I listen to different kinds of music depending on the work. But when I'm blogging, I can actually sing rock and roll songs while I'm blogging. So, and then just little things like that, or I wasn't interested in the unit and I wanted to, do something else, or I was reading when I should have been paying attention. Just a lot of things like that I got in trouble for. In junior high, I got in trouble for, let's see. So one time I got detention because I set an oven mitt on fire by accident. Okay. It was totally by accident. Okay. It was in cooking class.
Yeah.
And then the other reason was that I was eating as I was walking into a classroom. I was eating, and it was choir, and she got really mad at me, and so I got a detention for that. And then there was the one time that I didn't get in trouble, which I should have, when I actually brought my mom's diet pills to school. Her amphetamines.
Oh.
Yeah. And, I'm surprised nobody found out because, yeah.
That's a dangerous combination if you had ADHD and then you're taking amphetamines.
I wasn't taking them.
Oh, you weren't? Why did you bring them?
I was just so I could give them to somebody else.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I also shoplifted when I was a kid. I was not who I am today. And I like parents to know that because the brain can change. It's not easy, but you can create new behaviors in your kids, and they can become different people.
Well, that sounds like a good transition, but so let's do it in the format of still talking about you. So I imagine that there's some kind of light bulb moment, or there's some kind of event that happened that made you realize something that sent you on this path. So what is that?
Yeah. So in when I was in 10th grade. So I was going to regular high school, and then a couple evenings a week and Sundays, I went to what's called Hebrew high school. And it's like after your bar bat mitzvah, you're studying more Judaic studies, more Bible and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher who came that year, and he totally changed my life. He was able to somewhat ignore my behavior. I don't know how. And focus on my brain. And he just fed me whatever material he thought that my brain would be interested in. And he also told my parents that I was always really quick to try to get to the answer, but that the questions were more important. And my parents explained that to me. And so it was like he gave me permission to use my brain as it was meant to be used.
Right.
And it's funny because we reconnected on Facebook about 6 years ago, I guess.
Great.
Maybe 5 years ago. Yeah. And we're really good friends now. And I asked him one time, did you know what was going on? And he said, I didn't know anything specific. All I knew was that you were creative and brilliant and infinite. And I was just like, wow. That was like, he always saw the best in me. And that's all he really, like, he would respond if there was bad behavior, but he really focused on what I could do and not what I couldn't do. And the impact that he had on me made me want to give back. And he is the reason that I have done pretty much everything that I've done career-wise. Wow. I just wanted to be available for kids like me, just as he was available for me.
Yeah. That I wrote that down in quotes, and you know it word for word, and maybe you use it with some of your clients, creative and brilliant and infinite.
Yeah.
So how did that strike you at the time? Like, how old were you? 14, 15?
When he said that to me? Or when he said that to me was just about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Right. Oh, that's when he told you that that was his philosophy behind how he was going to interact with you. I see. Yeah. Okay.
He was but what he would do, for instance, like I was a literature major, and he taught literature. He taught Hebrew literature one year to me, and he taught Bible another year. And I was always looking for the meaning under the meaning, because that's what you do when you're a literature major. Yeah. You don't just read, you have to look for the meaning. And I was really I love that stuff. I still love it. Yeah. And other kids were a lot more literal, and that's pretty normal also for kids that aren't into literature. So I would say something, and this has happened to me several times in classes, where and it happens to kids with ADHD. You say something and it's exactly the point, exactly right on, but nobody gets it except the teacher. And then the teacher has to make a decision about, do I acknowledge it or do I not acknowledge it? And most teachers won't acknowledge that the student is right, because it's usually too advanced.
Yeah, you'd have to back up too far.
It.
Yeah.
Like, I had teachers that said, you're too, I would say something and they'd go, you're too far ahead. I need you not to come to class.
Whoa.
Literally.
Wow.
But he would always, the kids would be like, oh, that's ridiculous. And he would say, no, she's right. So, and that was also really, really helpful. I mean, he wouldn't teach the class just for me. He would go back and, work with everybody, but just to be seen and heard was huge.
Yeah.
It's just everything.
Well, this is you're just a great case study of something that I tell my students, which is that if you want to be helpful in the world and you want to make a difference, there are two sources for what you're going to end up doing. And the one is that there was an obstacle or a problem in your life, and then somebody cared enough about you to show you the way out. Or there was an obstacle or a problem for you, and you're so angered that it had happened that you want to make sure that nobody else ever has to go through it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
let's fast forward to what it is you do. Let's say I have an ADHD child. He's bouncing off the walls and he's driving me crazy. What is your program all about?
Well, in this case, in the case you're bringing me, this scenario, what I would start with is behavior.
Okay.
Because the way, to me, ADHD, granted, there are biological, sources of the condition, but to me, it's really about processing information differently, taking it in differently, generating it differently, moving it through differently. And so it's important that the parent know how to talk to their particular child and interact with their particular child. And often I find that families have a behavior, I was going to say system, but it's not really a system. And that's kind of the problem. They have rules, but they are just kind of a list of rules. And what works better is to have a system that's tailored for your family that addresses what the parents need and what the kids need and empowers everybody. And so that's one of my specialties is behavior for obvious reasons.
Okay. So let's go back to my hypothetical child who's bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
And so what are some questions about behaviors that you might ask me about this child?
So if somebody says my kid is bouncing off the walls, I'm going to want to know specifically what that means.
Yeah.
And I ask a lot of questions like, what does that mean specifically? Do you notice that it happens at certain times but not other times?
I see.
What do the triggers seem to be?
Okay.
Even what room is he in? And, just because I want to get a really complete picture, because basically the idea is that you want your child to feel safe and secure. And it's not to say that you are an unsafe parent. It's not that at all. It has to do with your child being able to receive that safety or security that you're offering. And often that's where the disconnect is, that the parent is offering safety and security and love, but the child, it's not matching with the way the child accepts it. And so the child still doesn't feel it, even though the parent is giving it out.
All right.
And
can you help? Yeah. Can you help make this more concrete? This is I'm having a hard time exactly picturing what you mean. So maybe you can help me flesh out what my answers would be. He's bouncing off the walls. Tell me something that I might say when you say, well, what exactly do you mean?
So I'll give you an example of a client.
Okay.
Great family, really close knit. The mom had this, nice idea that everybody, she had this fantasy that the kids would sit around the dining room table before dinner and they would all do their homework. And my client, he had trouble with that. And so he was, there may have been others with ADHD, but he was the one that was disrupting this dream. And so he would distract the others. He would, sort of ask challenging questions to his mom because he was unsettled and a little bit emotionally distressed by being in this situation that wasn't comfortable for him. Mm-hmm. So when I started working with him, I started asking him, where would you want to work? Where would you feel the most comfortable and where would you get the most work done?
I see.
So he said his bedroom. So we go up to his room. I sit on his bed, and I'm completely quiet, and I just watch him. And what I notice is that he has this setup in his room, and it looks kind of like a library carrel. So he's got these sort of blinders, the sides of the carrel. And everything that's in front of him is stuff that he looks at all the time. It's not like it's a changing bulletin board or anything like that. Mm-hmm. There's nobody around, and there's no distractions. And his feet are playing with this big rock that's under his desk.
So he's adapted. He's displacing his hyperactivity
anxiety
onto the.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yep.
And does he even know that he's doing that? Do you think?
No.
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 How about
and
that?
so I said, and so after a while I said, so tell me about the rock. And it was something he got at camp, and and so what I said to him, so some kids do really well with fidgets, things that they can hold in their hand and squeeze and that sort of thing. But he needed something to do with his feet. Uh-huh. And so I put all this together, and this doesn't have to be done at somebody's house. It's easily, nowadays with technology, it's super simple to coach anybody around the world.
Yeah.
But so then I can come to the mom and say, here's what's going on, here's what makes him more comfortable. And honestly, a lot of ADHD kids won't connect unless they feel emotionally secure first. So, which is just, it's different. And parents often don't know, what does that mean? And how do I know if it's happening? And so that's what I help them with.
I see.
And then the other thing is that it's important to know is that people with ADHD, we're kind of like seismographs, and any tremor in the force, sort of any tremor, anything different, anything that's off from what's usual, we will pick up on. And if we don't have a filter, we will say something about it. Uh-huh. And so sometimes, like this kid, his mom said something about, I said something like, he said some phrase to me the other day, and it sounded like it came from Law and Order. And she was like, oh, we don't watch Law and Order in our house. None of us do.
Okay.
And he said, you just watched it last night, Mom. And she was not happy about that. Uh-huh. But all he was trying to do, he wasn't trying to get her in trouble. He was just trying to, maintain the status quo, kind of get things back in balance.
Yeah. Because
that's really important to us to recalibrate things constantly.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I really like about this example that you gave is that it kind of ties in some of the other things that you were saying. And so maybe we can go back in time and clarify it a little bit. Like what's great is here's this child, and this child is having trouble doing homework in the location where the parent wants them to do it.
Right.
You give permission for the child to try doing their homework in a location of their choice. And so the kid gets to be where he feels more comfortable and has access to some of these things that let him displace his anxiety, but the parents still get the child to do their homework. Because it almost seems like there would be plenty of other parents who were worried that if they didn't strictly and increasingly strictly enforce the rules, then the only alternative is that the kid's just not going to do his homework anymore. And so there's this it seems like with the parents, there's a lot of either or mentality, and you're giving a both and situation for everybody to be happy.
Yes, I am a both and person for sure. It's funny that you say that, but yes, that is me. I think a lot of, it's really hard to be a parent, and my hat's off to all of them. and honestly, having a child with ADHD is often like having another job. And part of that is because society still thinks that it's okay to make fun of kids with ADHD, and a lot of professionals, and I'm talking about like teachers, for instance, even some doctors, school counselors, where kids spend so much of their time, they don't even understand ADHD. And so it's hard to be the parent of a child that is misunderstood to such a degree. And it's very uncomfortable. You know, you want your child to fit in and to feel good about themselves. And most probably ADHD kids don't, because there are a whole bunch of people they interact with that are trying to get them to change.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen with a lot of other kids in school. You're just accepted the way you are and we'll accommodate you. But with ADHD, it's like, you need to fit in.
Yeah.
What you're doing is wrong. This is the right way. And that's really hard. So,
not to mention the pressures on the parents that, you know, they're worried that other parents are going to see them as bad parents because they can't control their children.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shame and embarrassment. And my philosophy and what I've noticed about parents of ADHD kids is that they are doing everything they possibly can to make things better. But because of it's an uncomfortable, it's a kind of anxious position to be in, to be the parent of an ADHD child, because there's so many things kind of, you know, the child feels like a victim, and in fact they are a victim. So it's not totally weird, and it's heartbreaking, and it's all of these things. And what I want to provide is targeted parenting, you know, this sort of like, you don't need to just be sticking Band-Aids here or troubleshooting. The idea is to create a system in your family that's tailored for your family so that you are doing less, not more.
How about that? Well, that has got to seem to some parents who might be listening like an impossibility, that they would both get what they were looking for, have a child who was more content, and be less burdened with all of the energy that they're having to put in. So let me just, we're going to need to wrap up pretty soon. Let's just talk about if there's a person out there who wants to look you up and see whether you might be able to offer them something. How do they find you, and what would that process look like if they hired you?
Yeah, well, the easiest way to work with me is I started a membership club back in May of this year, and the idea was that it would make me available to anyone around the world for a low fee. So it's a monthly membership club. You're in charge of your membership. It's not you can do 1 month and then go, forget it. Okay. You can leave. But we do group coaching / Q&A calls several times a week. You can attend, once you're a member, you can attend as many as you want. Yeah. We also have free classes. We also have discounts on private coaching. So that's the easiest way to go. It's a nice way to both dip your toe in the water and dive in. You can do either one of those.
And how much is that? Can I ask?
Well, right now, and for sure until the end of 2018, it's only $18 a month.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yes. And so, eventually it's going to go up. But my goal, my overall goal, what I'm here to do is I want to reach as many families as I possibly can all around the world, because you are all raising kids that are, creative geniuses, future leaders, and just like the same way I did when I was teaching. There are people that cannot express who they are and should be able to. And I was one of those people. And so I want to offer that to families all over the world, as many families as possible. And so I know that some families can't afford the sort of high-end coaching offers that I have. Yeah. So I created this so that anybody could afford it. So yeah.
Well, I mean, that's
at my website. So that's blockedtobrilliant.com.
That's great. Blockedtobrilliant.com. I spoke with somebody else just the other day who was talking about how there was a parent who said, I've spent money on soccer coaches and football coaches and business coaches and life coaches, and yet I would give all of that up for my kids. So why not spend a little money on a parenting coach? We can all use some outside advice to help us through some of the muddle.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I really thank you for your time. I would agree.
John.
I would agree with your instructor that you're creative and brilliant and infinite, as are you, my listeners. So we'll wrap up now. Once again, get in touch with me if you're interested in being on the show, or if you have some ideas for topics. drjohnrich.com, where you can find some more information about my new book, which will be available on Amazon next week. It's called Positive Parenting. Yes, and there are a couple other things that come with that, workbooks and such. So once again, thanks for tuning in. I will catch you next week. Bye.
Living in a city, when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are felt, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right. See, she never wanna be a new IPMNation.com